Hi there. Thanks again for joining us. Once again, this is AARP Foundation in the community. My name is O.S. Owen, and I'll be your host today. And we have the lovely, the phenomenal, the fantastic, the artistic Margaret Murphy Webb joining us today. Margaret is a Chicago-based jazz vocalist and activist, and she's a graduate of Chicago State University, and she is here today on behalf of the Southside Jazz Coalition. Welcome, Margaret.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so pleased to be here.
Well, as you know, we are talking about what we do in the community, and the Southside Jazz Coalition is one of our community partners. And Margaret, tell us real quick, Southside Jazz Coalition. What is it, who is it, and how did it get started?
The Southside Jazz Coalition started over a breakfast meeting between myself, Darius Lawrence, and Charles Heath, who's a drummer in town. And we were talking about the absence of jazz in Chicago. I'm a jazz vocalist, and I started singing on the South Side when there were clubs all up and down 75th Street. So I was called the Queen of 75th Street because I was singing in about 3 or 4 clubs at the same time. Anyway, long story short, we decided that we would start an organization that would promote free jazz because Von Freeman had a jam session on Tuesdays, every Tuesday night for about 30, 40 years. And all the musicians, we would all come and we would gather. It was free. You could just walk in, grab a drink, get on the wall and decide whether you want to perform or not. So I wanted to do something in that same vein. So that's where the Southside Jazz Coalition started. Free venues on the South Side because the thing that we both know is that when an area is culturally depressed, it's not just economics, it's also the arts and culture.
The arts and the culture.
Everything disappears. So it is. It has turned into a desert, a cultural desert, and we are trying to make it not so.
You're not trying to. You are and been very effective.
Thank you.
Jazz. What is jazz? I mean, we hear about jazz. I love jazz. For our viewing audience, tell us, what is jazz?
Jazz music is an African American art form. Jazz music was started. Well, they say that the originators of jazz were Dizzy Gillespie, Coltrane, John Coltrane. The names are going to escape me because I'm trying to think of it right now. What they would do is that they would take that those old songs from musicals, like The Sound of Music, My Favorite Things. Everybody knows that song, My Favorite Things. But Coltrane took that song and turned it into something different. And they called that music jazz. They would add 13th, flat 13ths. Now I'm talking musical terms.
That's okay, musical terms. That's good. Now, okay, so jazz originated out of ragtime, bebop. It kind of transitioned. So you're telling me that jazz started where?
Jazz started, they say, in New York, and it came here to Chicago. Chicago has its own type of jazz. New York jazz was more of a freestyle, like the AACM. That's more of a freestyle jazz. But Chicago jazz is a more soulful jazz. And, you know, those guys all came here, Dizzy Gillespie, Coltrane. They would go to the Regal. They would go to the Sutherland. We had all these different jazz clubs, and those jazz musicians used to come here and play.
I know in Bronzeville,
yes,
there was numerous jazz clubs and jazz performers.
Yes.
As that transition, what happened to jazz? Because it seemed like it disappeared for a minute.
It did disappear. I say I was really singing regularly until the 70s. And then
You've been singing a long time.
Well, you're trying to find out how old
I am. No. Well, I mean, when you say jazz, most folks think of instrumental music. They're not real familiar with jazz vocalists. I mean,
oh, come on, man. Everybody knows about Sarah Vaughan.
Well, everybody knows about Sarah Vaughan.
Yeah.
However, our younger generation might not always understand the genre, if you will. I mean, you're a jazz vocalist.
Yes, I am.
Give me a little something real quick, off the cuff. Come on, just a little something.
Them that's got shall get, them with not shall lose. So the Bible says, and it still is news. Your mama may have, your papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own. Billie Holiday.
Well, see, and my father used to sing that song to me as well, especially the part where God bless the child that has his own. So now, so you're sitting at was it a coffee shop or was it in your basement, having coffee? You created this idea of Southside Jazz Coalition.
Yes.
What happened next?
Well, what happened next is that I just took the bull by the horns. I found somebody that could make us a nonprofit. I put a board together, and I found some people in the community who wanted to work with me. I have a volunteer coordinator, Peggy Thompson. I dragged in my husband, bassist Chuck Webb. Darius Lawrence, of course, is a Grammy-winning sound engineer. Cliff Underwood, Dr. Cliff Underwood, is the one of the co-chairs of the South Shore Drill Team. I forgot who else was on. Sasha Dalton. Everybody knows who Sasha Dalton is. She is a singer, a producer. So I got that team together, and we started putting together programs.
So everybody was on board with this idea of bringing jazz back to the Southside.
Yes.
Under your direction and under your leadership.
Yes.
You know. Now, when you started this, how were you received in the community?
The response was overwhelming. From our first program, well, I had already been giving free jazz at the 50-yard line. I started doing that in 2003. So it's just a continuation of what I started in 2003, right after Vaughn got sick. So I just grabbed my people, and we just moved to a new venue.
So now, I've taken countless of my volunteers to the venue.
Yes.
And the venue is?
Augustus Tolton School, 7120 South Calumet.
And jazz is offered when?
Second Tuesdays of every month.
Okay, so second Tuesdays of every month.
7 p.m.
At 7 p.m. You can find your way to St. Tolson, Augustus.
Augustus
Tolson.
Catholic School.
Okay.
7120 South Calumet. 7 p.m. Free parking, free admission.
Come out and join us. We have a wonderful time there. And if you're just tuning in, we are the AARP Foundation Experience Corps. We're always looking for folks to volunteer, 50 and over, to be volunteer tutors and mentors for kindergartners, first graders, second graders, and third graders in the Chicago Public Schools. We can be reached at 312-660-8655. And we are here with Margaret Murphy Webb, a jazz vocalist, and she is Southside Jazz Coalition, and we're talking about jazz on the Southside. Now, let me ask you this now. So you bring in these folks, these individuals, and they all seem to be musicians.
Yes.
All right. So now you're in your, what year is this now for the Southside Coalition?
We were incorporated in 2015.
2015. So
4 years.
Okay, 4 years down the road. It's moving on. Where's it going next?
We want to bring back the South Shore Jazz Festival. The South Shore Jazz Festival was a staple in the black community, and I can't say how many years, but Geraldine DeHaas started that festival, she and her husband. And I talked to Miss DeHaas 2 years ago with her blessing, where she said she would help us any way that she could. But putting together a festival is harder than it looks.
Yes. I participated in that festival for some years.
Okay.
We had the Chicago Morehouse alumni to have its back-to-school event incorporated in that festival. And we did that for quite some time. And we love the jazz.
Yes.
And I thought it was a great opportunity to expose our returning students and our incoming students, as well as returning alumni, to that festival. And so we miss it dearly. We miss it dearly. So I hope you can bring it back, and let's see how we can support that effort.
Well, there should be a festival. I mean, we have the Inglewood Festival. Ernest Dawkins just celebrated his 20th year of the Inglewood Jazz Festival. Have you been to that?
No, I have
You
not.
got to check that out. And, it can be done. It can be done. So we're hoping that by 2021 that we'll have everything together. We'll bring the festival back.
Well, what was impossible last year is possible now.
Oh, yes,
And
sir.
we're the possibilities of possibilities. And this music, music transcends everything. When you look at someone's history, you look at their art, their music, their literature, and you guys help us hang on to our humanity. You bring that back. Music crosses all lines, race, sex, religion. It crosses everything. It's universal language.
Yes, it does.
So let me ask you this. What's the politics of bringing jazz back?
Working with the city. We have to be able to work with the city. Venue, very important. That's the problem with the South Side. There's no venue dedicated to jazz music on the South Side of Chicago. So it's about venues, politics, money, sponsors, getting politicians on board, saying that they will help you, because you have to have permits. You have to get sponsors to help you get those permits. Everything costs money. So that's the politics of trying to put on a jazz festival.
What's the overall mission of the Southside Jazz Coalition?
that we leave a legacy of jazz, resurgence of jazz on the South Side. That when people see what we're doing, because we have had a couple of people who saw what we were doing, they decided to follow in our footsteps and bring some jazz, small venues around the South Side. That's what our mission is, to have a resurgence and to teach our kids. Like you said, children don't know, our kids don't know what jazz is. So to teach them, to give that tradition, because that's an African American art form. So we need to teach our kids. We need to know our music. There are a lot of young jazz musicians out here. We need to give them a platform where they can play.
So what can our listening, our viewing audience do to assist? What can they do to help?
They can come out to performances. If your audience can just come out, if they know about some jazz that's happening on the South Side or happening in the city, just go to jazz performances, because the city was under the impression before I started becoming the squeaky wheel.
The squeaky wheel gets the oil.
That people would not come out in large numbers to see these performances. But the last 2 years, I've proven them wrong.
Well, you packed that place. I mean, the time that I was there, it was over 150 people in there. And what I really enjoyed the most, after you had your standard performance, then you invited folks from the audience to come in and have a jam session.
Yes, sir.
So if you're out there listening and viewing us, and you are so inclined, come on out on the second Tuesday.
Second Tuesday.
Bring your instrument and join in on the fun.
And
join
sing.
in on the jazz.
And we're looking for singers too.
Singers, jazz musicians.
Straight ahead.
You know, my favorite instrument, and before I tell you mine, what's your favorite instrument?
The voice.
The vocals, the vocal cords. You play the vocals, right?
Yes, yes. Okay. And I play piano.
Well,
but I love beautiful singing.
You know,
any genre of beautiful singing.
Well, you know, you've exposed me personally to such an array of jazz artists, jazz singers. I was an old school jazz bass player. You know, upright bass, double bass. I played bass violin in the orchestra at Morehouse College. So for me, it was just a wonderful thing to be a part of that, you know. So, okay, what's your personal connection to all of this? What started your role in bringing back this movement of jazz to the South Side?
Von Freeman did. I started singing professionally at 22 because I would go down to Von Freeman's jam sessions. He was at the Matador when I started, and then he moved to the new apartment. And I went there, and I saw all these old singers, all these seasoned
veterans.
All the elders. Mm-hmm. All the elders were there, the musicians and the vocalists. And that's where I learned my craft. That's where I learned 90% of the songs that I sing at jam sessions. And that's what started me. What I said, I need to give jam sessions and have these kids out here doing what I did. They need to come to the jam sessions. They need to learn the way that I learned. You have to learn from your elders, and I'm finding that young people don't want to do that anymore.
Well, you have to emulate this behavior. So, who are your favorites?
My favorite singers, it has changed over the years. I always tell everybody I love Sarah Vaughan, but now I'm into Cleo Lane.
Cleo Lane. Well, you know, mine is Margaret Murphy Webb. That's who my favorite is, you know. Now, how much did the educational part play? I mean, a lot of folks, you know, have that ear. They learn to play by ear. They learn to sing, you know, off the cuff. But what role did the educational play for you?
Well, I went back to school for music because, I was blessed to have music in the schools. A lot of schools don't have music anymore. So I learned to play piano. I started piano at 6. And I stopped taking piano lessons when I was about 13. So I could always read music. But when I became a jazz musician, as you know, totally different. It's chords and it's flat 13s and 7s. I had no idea what was happening on the bandstand. And I got tired of musicians talking that language around me because I had a degree in education from Loyola. So I didn't learn any music really at Loyola, so I decided to go back to Chicago State at an older age.
Well, at a mature age, and that's what we're talking about. You know, those of us out here who are working on our second and third careers, there's opportunities. As we age, we don't stop dreaming, we don't stop living.
No, we don't stop learning.
Our passion continues to grow.
No.
And we're learning, we're life learners.
Yes, we are.
And you're just showing that if this is what you want to do, then go out and do it.
Yes, I did. So 2014, I graduated from Chicago State with a degree in vocal performance and jazz piano.
So that's a specific area.
Yes, it is.
Oh, now is that popular in the schools now?
No. No, you have to go to schools that are really dedicated to that. I'm not going to drop the name of schools, but there are some schools in Chicago that are dedicated to those types of studies.
Well, Chicago is the heartbeat of so many things, especially arts, culture,
Yes, it
music,
is.
and writing and performances. So continue this journey. So, okay, we're now 2019.
Yes.
Where are we 10 years from now? Where's the Southside Jazz Coalition 10 years from now?
10 years from now, I'll be in a nursing home.
No, you won't. No, you won't. No, you won't. You got good genes, okay? You'll still be singing, and Southside Jazz Coalition will have expanded.
Yes, it will. Yes, 10 years from now, the Southside Jazz Coalition, in partnership with AARP Foundation, will be presenting more jazz programs, free jazz programs all over the South Side. We'll have a festival in place. We'll have educational piece in place where we can teach some young kids how to be jazz musicians.
Now, I've also noticed at your last event, it was a wonderful event, the gala over at the DuSable Museum, you had this beautiful cadre of young musicians.
Yes.
And so now, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys are mentoring young folks in this craft?
Oh, yes.
And
Oh, yes.
Tell our audience about that.
I met this gentleman named Marcus Burks. He has a wonderful organization called Urban Aspirations, and he and I got into a conversation about how he had a lot of young musicians, and he wanted to start bringing them to the Jazz Jam, and he wanted to start exposing them to older musicians. And I said, not only that, I will pay them to play.
What?
There are organizations out here that people don't even know about that are mentoring young musicians, and Urban Aspirations is one of them.
Well, they were phenomenal.
They were wonderful.
You know,
They were
and
wonderful.
when I closed my eyes, I didn't see an age. I didn't see their youth. But when I opened my eyes, I said, I got boots older than these folks,
These are
and
high school.
they're playing music with heart, with passion.
They love it.
From back in the day, if I can say that.
Yes, yes, you may.
Okay, so now tell us about the bass player in your band.
In my band.
Well, yeah, isn't his name Chuck Webb?
Well, Chuck Webb, my wonderful husband,
See, it's in the family, right?
is not in my band. He would really get upset if I get him when I can. The thing about jazz is that you don't necessarily have a band.
Right.
If you have a gig, you just call some cats, and everybody knows the music, and we come in and we do the gig.
So you had the Chuck Webb Trio
I had the Chuck Webb.
back you up.
I hired the Chuck Webb Trio to play, and my husband has been a musician for, oh my goodness, he graduated from University of Miami with a degree in jazz composition.
So he's got music in his blood.
He's got music in his blood. He played 10 years with Ramsey Lewis. He played 10 years with Jerry Butler, and now he's a theater musician.
Okay, so now what can we do to get youth into jazz? What role can our audience play? What role can we play to assist in exposing this to the next generation of musicians?
If you have children and young children who are interested in music or who are not even interested in music, bring them to the Jazz Jam. Take them somewhere and expose them to jazz. Because my granddaughter, who was 22, kept telling me, I hate jazz, I hate jazz. I took her to a Jazz Jam. Now she loves it. They have to see it so they can understand it.
Can we bring them down to the Tuesday event?
Yes, it's all ages. Yes, I had a 4-year-old hit the stage one day. She decided she wanted to dance with the band. So yes, you can bring all ages.
That's fantastic, to have the passion that you have. And I personally want to say thank you for being who you be, being the best version of yourself, helping us to hang on to our humanities, through the arts, through music. This is how we transcend all types of racism and prejudices and inequities. We do it through music. I once met a gentleman, and he spoke a different language. I wasn't familiar with it. And I noticed he had his violin case. So he was asking for something, but I couldn't understand it. So I quickly pulled out a sheet of paper and scratched out some notes on the treble clef and the bass clef, and we were able to communicate. So I think that's fantastic. Now what about the mixing jazz with rap? What's your take on that?
Of course, hip hop done the right way is a wonderful way for our young people to tell the story. Very positive, and just like I know, brother, that hip-hop started with telling the story of our neighborhoods. It has in some areas it has transitioned into something else. But a lot of these young people are still out here telling their story, the story of their neighborhood. And with some jazz music behind it, it's fantastic. We've had a couple of rappers come down to the Jazz Jam.
Well, I mean, I'm open to it, and I've heard some beautiful pieces, some spoken words done in the backdrop of jazz. I've
Yes.
heard some, I call them jazz rappers.
Yes.
Is that such a term?
Well, it's your term. You just
know.
made that up.
Okay. Now let me put you on the spot here. Can you rap?
No, I cannot rap.
Everybody can rap,
I
from what
cannot
I'm
rap.
told,
I
huh?
cannot rap. I cannot rap. No.
Now, do you write?
Yes, I've written a lot of pieces that are at home on my piano.
So you ever thinking about, publishing these pieces?
I am. I plan to do that next year.
Well, maybe let's talk afterwards to see if we can get together and you can put on a show just for our volunteers and anyone else that's volunteering, and then bring them out to expose them to you and give you a chance to fill out some of your work.
That would be wonderful.
What was impossible yesterday is possible today. Now, we're in the studios with Margaret Murphy Webb, Chicago jazz vocalist and activist of the Southside Jazz Coalition, and you can see her every second Tuesday at 7 o'clock at
Augustus Tolton Catholic School, 7120 South Calumet Avenue. It's right across the street from A.A. Rayner.
Yes, and I love that venue. And once again, we are the AARP Experience Corps. We are constantly looking for volunteers to be tutors and mentors for kindergartners, first graders, second graders, and third graders, and we can be reached at 312-660-8655. Now, let me ask you this. Volunteers. How do you use volunteers, and how can folks be volunteers at the Southside Jazz Coalition?
We use our volunteers to greet people at the door, to serve food. Whatever volunteers do, they help us clean the room. But we always give our volunteers a great party at the end of the year. So if you come in and volunteer for the Southside Jazz Coalition, we're going to take care of you at the end of the year.
So can I volunteer?
Yes, you can.
Because I love a good party.
Yes.
I want to come to that party at the end of the year.
Yes, and you're already invited. We've been talking about inviting you and your volunteers.
Oh, you're too very kind and gracious, Now, in wrapping up here, who do we call for information? Tell our viewing audience who they can call for more information
You
about the
can
Southside
go
Jazz Coalition.
to www.southsidejazzcoalition.com, or you can call 773-888-6709.
That number again?
773-888-6709.
And I have to encourage our viewing audience. It's a wonderful, wonderful event. The second Tuesday of the month down there, we have a outstanding time. I bring roughly about 70 to 75 of our wonderful volunteers, and they don't want to go home. And unfortunately, you have to put them out. The food is fantastic, the atmosphere is great, and I want to encourage you, if you are a former musician, you're never a former musician. Once a musician, always a musician. Come on out, bring your instrument, and join in the jam session. It's a wonderful opportunity to meet new people, to renew old relationships, because a lot of folks in that room. I mean, I came down there and I met some of my volunteers who I didn't know were musicians who were jamming in the jam session.
Okay. We're a family. Come and join our family.
So is there anything else that you want to say before we say goodbye?
Support live music in Chicago. Just support live music, especially on the South Side.
Especially on the South Side. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I want to thank my wonderful producer, the Black Butterfly, and I want to thank our guest, Margaret Murphy Webb, Southside Jazz Coalition, for bringing such a wonderful gift to our families on the South Side and in our communities. My name is O.S. Owen. I am your host. I am with the AARP Foundation Experience Corps. We're constantly looking for volunteers to be tutors and mentors for kindergartners, first graders, second graders, and third graders in Chicago Public Schools. Stay tuned for our next time, and we'll see you in the community with the AARP Foundation Experience Corps. Until next time.